If you live in Antigua or anywhere in the Caribbean for that matter, you might be sleeping on some of the most powerful whole food starches on the planet. And I'm not talking about superfoods in that trendy, overpriced supplement sense. I mean those genuinely unprocessed, straight from the ground foods that have been feeding people forever. So today we're going to talk about 6 Caribbean starches. We're going to break them down, ranking them from head to head on glycemic impact, fiber content, resistant starch, and overall nutrient density. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which ones deserve a regular spot on your plate and which ones you need to be more careful with. So let's get into it. First, let's just talk about why this even matters. Most people nowadays default to rice and pasta as their go-to carbohydrate sources, and there's nothing criminally wrong with that. But the thing is, both rice and pasta are processed to varying degrees. White rice, it has had its bran and germ removed. Pasta is typically made from refined wheat flour. And when you strip food down like that, you're going to lose fiber, you lose micronutrients, and what you're left with is basically a starch source that rushes into your bloodstream very fast and that overwhelms your liver, okay, your metabolism. Root tubers, though, and starchy fruits, we're going to talk about those today, and those come exactly as nature made them, with no processing, no refinement, just the whole food in its complete form. And that completeness is what is going to make them worth your attention. Now, before we rank these starches, you need to understand two concepts that I hope will change how you think about carbohydrates in general. The first one is glycemic index, and this is essentially a measure of how fast a carbohydrate food raises your blood sugar after you eat it, right? How fast. Now, a high glycemic index means that a sharp, rapid spike happens after the food. Lower glycemic index means a slower, more gradual rise in your blood sugar levels. Second concept is resistant starch, and this is where things get a little more interesting. Not all starch in food behaves the same way in your body. So there are two main types of starch molecules to know about. There's that amylose, and that one resists digestion, meaning it passes through your small intestine mostly intact. So it kind of behaves more like dietary fiber. And then there's amylopectin on the other hand, and this one is more branched, it's more easily broken down, and your digestive enzymes, they can work on it very quickly. Foods with more amylose and resistant starch, and generally they have lower glycemic index and a better effect on your gut health. Now, the resistant starch is good food for your good germs in the gut. So keep those two ideas in your mind as we go through this ranking. Now, starting at the bottom of the ranking, meaning the least favorable for blood glucose management, we have cassava. I love cassava. But cassava, it's an incredibly important food across the Caribbean and much of the developing world because it is quite resilient, it is affordable, it's filling. But from a glycemic standpoint, it sits at the top of this list in a way that is not very flattering. Cassava has a high glycemic index, and part of the reason is that its starch composition leans heavily towards the more rapidly digested type. And it's also relatively lower in fiber compared to some of the other options here. But that doesn't mean you should never eat cassava. I love cassava, okay? It means you should just be thoughtful about portion size and, more importantly, what you pair with it, what you eat it with. So eating cassava alongside some protein, some fat, vegetables, that's going to blunt the blood glucose response quite significantly. Coming in at number 5 now, we have just the yam. Now, yam in the Antiguan context, it refers to true yam, not that sweet potato that North Americans sometimes call yam. True yam has a moderate glycemic index, which puts it in a better position than cassava. It also provides a pretty decent amount of fiber, and it contains some resistant starch. Now, one genuinely impressive thing about yam is its micronutrient profile. It delivers potassium, vitamin C, B vitamins, and manganese. So while it's not leading the pack in terms of your blood sugar friendliness, it earns its place on the table because of the nutritional makeup of it. Now, at number 4, we have dasheen, which is also known as taro in some other parts of the world. And dasheen is interesting because it has a relatively moderate glycemic index, and it contains a type of starch that is actually made up of very small granules. And some research actually suggests that it may be digested more slowly than other starches. And it also comes with fiber, and it provides nutrients like potassium and manganese. Now, one thing worth knowing about dasheen is that it must always be cooked thoroughly because raw dasheen contains compounds that are very irritating to the mouth and the throat. But once it's properly cooked, it's a solid, well-rounded starch with respectable overall nutritional value. Number three, number three, this is sweet potato. Now, sweet potato is not too bad. It has a moderate glycemic index, though this can vary depending on how you prepare it. So boiled sweet potato tends to have a lower glycemic response than a baked potato because the starch structure behaves differently with the different cooking methods and the moisture levels. But excuse me, but the thing that sets sweet potato apart is its micronutrient profile, and this depends on the variety. Now, in Antigua and the rest of the Caribbean, that white sweet potato commonly eaten is not a rich source of beta carotene like that orange sweet potato they have in the United States. It lacks that deep orange color that signals that high vitamin A activity. Instead, though, it functions more as a clean, whole food source of energy. It provides starch, potassium, some vitamin C, and B vitamins. Now, the orange varieties, those are common in the United States, and those are among really the richest food sources of beta carotene, which your body converts to vitamin A. And then there's the purple variety that brings something different. They are rich in anthocyanins, these powerful antioxidants that support your metabolic and vascular health. Now, all varieties of sweet potato contain some fiber, which helps slow down the glucose release. So, while the white sweet potato may not have the same vitamin A advantage as that orange type, it still offers a more stable whole food carbohydrate source compared to more refined starches. Now, the combination of manageable glycemic impact, fiber, and depending on the variety, either antioxidant or vitamin content, that keeps sweet potato solidly in the top tier of starches when used appropriately. Number two, we have breadfruit. This one might surprise people because breadfruit doesn't always get the attention it deserves. I was looking everywhere for breadfruit when I was in Antigua last summer, and I just couldn't find it anyway. Maybe it wasn't in season, and I really miss my breadfruit. But breadfruit has a moderate glycemic index, not the lowest on this list. Wait till you hear number one, but definitely more, it's not problematic when it comes to, some of the packaged things. It has a pretty meaningful amount of fiber, and the fiber content is important because, as we've mentioned already, fiber is going to slow digestion. It helps feed beneficial gut bacteria, and it contributes to that steadier blood glucose curve that we're all looking for from that metabolic health perspective. But breadfruit also brings antioxidants, believe it or not, and phytonutrients to the equation. And we're not just talking about like a starchy filler here. We're talking about a whole food with actual protective compounds built in, right? Breadfruit is also going to give you some vitamin C, potassium, B vitamins, and the combination of that moderate glycemic impact, that genuine fiber content, and then that antioxidant dimension is what puts breadfruit at number two. And at number one, the clear winner is, guess what? When it comes to glycemic impact and resistant starch content, the clear winner is green banana. I love green bananas, and this is probably the most unappreciated food in the entire list. Green banana, meaning, of course, unripe banana that's eaten as a starchy vegetable rather than a sweet fruit. It has a remarkably low glycemic index compared to every other starch we've already discussed today. And the reason comes back to resistant starch. Now, unripe bananas are loaded with resistant starch, and that high resistant starch content means that a significant portion of the carbohydrate in a green banana is not being rapidly broken down and absorbed as glucose. Instead, it's passing through your large intestine where it acts as a prebiotic, feeding your beneficial gut bacteria and supporting your overall health. That green banana, it's wonderful. Now, as a banana ripens, that resistant starch converts to simple sugars, which is why, of course, ripe banana tastes sweet and it has a higher glycemic impact. But green banana in its unripe state is genuinely one of the best starch sources that you can eat from a blood sugar management perspective and health in general. And it also provides potassium, vitamin B6, vitamin C, and so the nutritional profile in general supports its case further as a superior starch. Now, there's something worth understanding about all these starches collectively. Preparation method matters enormously. Cooking and then cooling starchy foods actually increases their resistant starch content through a process called retrogradation. Don't worry about that word. But when starch is cooked and then allowed to cool, some of the starch molecules, they reorganize, it changes up, it reorganizes into this form that is harder for the digestive enzymes to break down. And this applies across all starches in general on this list. So eating cooled, cooked dasheen or cooled, cooked green banana the next day is actually going to have a lower glycemic impact than eating those same foods freshly cooked and hot. And that's a simple practical tip you can apply immediately. Who knew leftovers were superior? Now, the broader takeaway from today's video is that having access to these foods locally, you are sitting on a nutritional advantage that many people in the world simply don't have. These are whole, unprocessed, deeply nutritious carbohydrate sources, and they outperform refined alternatives in every meaningful category. So forget the noodles and so on. Now, the ranking from best to worst, you know, green banana, that's at the top, followed by breadfruit, then sweet potato, then dasheen, then yam, with cassava at the bottom in terms of glycemic considerations. None of these foods are bad foods, of course. They're just, they're real foods in their whole form, but understanding where they sit relative to each other helps you make smarter, more intentional choices between or based on your health goals. So if you found this breakdown useful, definitely share it with somebody who could benefit from it. And let me know in the comments which of these starches you eat most regularly. I will see you in the next one. Bye. Thanks for watching.